Welcome to Good Shepherd's podcast on parenting, and this is our very first episode in this series titled Busy World, Anxious Parents. We're so excited that you are here diving into this topic of parenting, this very, very important topic to the church and just to every single person's lives. And as always, we have Father Zack here, and we also have some more guests this time. So Joe Tremblay is back with us, our coordinator of adult formation, and then our very special guest today, Regan Grelling, parishioner and just great person. So, and mom of 2, correct?
Mom of 2.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And let's see, dad of 5. 6. I'm sorry, Joe. That's okay. And then dad of 2 and
dad of 11,000.
There it is. All right. You got us beat, I guess, not that it's a competition, but in the Catholic world, sometimes I guess it is. Anyways, okay. Our verse for this, I kind of want to introduce with a verse. There's only need of one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her. And that's Luke 10:38. So that's awesome. And then a little quote to kick us off too. This is a good one. Love and hurry are fundamentally incompatible. Love always takes time, and time is the one thing hurried people don't have. That's a truth bomb right there. Joe, what's that from? You just dropped it in there.
The Art of Neighboring,
okay.
Actually by Evangelical Christian.
Nice.
They do really good with that.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, now that all the formal stuff's out of the way, we got to start with our awesome icebreaker. So today's question is, what's something your kids think or thought that you were great at that you're actually terrible at? Joe, do you want to kick us off?
My kids don't think I'm great at anything.
You're at that stage.
The compliments I usually get from the kids is that I'm chill and that I'm calm under pressure when, things are, not going well. So they will tell each other, talk to dad first, and then your mom. So that's one thing that they say, and it's a surprise to me because I don't feel like I'm calm. I get a little anxious sometimes and sweat it out when things are not going my way. But yeah, so the appearance is one thing, but what's going on in the inside, I feel sometimes that I don't live up to that all the time. So
that's all. Yeah. That's funny. Regan, do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit and then give your answer?
Yeah, sure. I'm Regan Grelling, and I've been a parishioner here since December 2021.
Awesome.
I have been married to my husband, Bo, for almost 12 years.
Awesome.
So in November is our 12-year anniversary. We do have 2 kids. They're both over at Holy Trinity. Gaines is turning 10 in December, and Kyle is 7.5. That half is very important at this age. And she just had her first reconciliation, so we're really excited about that. So December's going to be a busy month when she receives first communion and then birthday and then Christmas. So we're very excited about that. And I'm a Little Lambs teacher here at our Little Lambs preschool downstairs.
Awesome. So, what's one thing your kids think you're great at that you're not actually good at?
They used to think I was fantastic with academics. I used to have all the answers.
Yeah.
I could knock 10 plus 10 is 20, no problem. They thought I was a genius, helping with homework and stuff. Gaines is even though he's in 4th grade, they're doing 5th grade level math. And so I'm trying my best to help with homework, but they're realizing I don't have all the answers. And so I'm like, your dad will be here any minute. I'm sure he'd love to help you with this homework. I'm going to take a step back. And Gaines will question me now. He's like, I thought you've been through school. You've been through 4th grade. And I was like, that was a long time ago, and I don't remember some things. So, I think they thought I had more book smarts than I do. Whoops.
Yeah. My daughter's in 5th grade. She'll bring home math. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I don't know what to tell you.
I can't give you any answers.
That's why you're in ministry.
That's right. Yeah.
No numbers.
A graph of the older, the axes. The older you get, and the smarter you think your parents are, and the graph just kind of just takes some notes.
That's right.
That's right. When she talks about history, I'm there. But not with math.
That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Father? I know no kids, but you had a kindergarten classroom at once.
Yeah, kindergartners, and I worked with middle schoolers. I've worked with high schoolers, and then of course we're doing a lot of stuff with the kids in formation and stuff here. I would say across the board, the thing that everyone thinks I'm good at by taking one look at me is basketball, and it takes you approximately a second to realize that is not the case. I can't jump more than an inch. I can't run fast in small bursts. I can't do that. I can't shoot. There's literally not a single skill I possess that would make me a good basketball player.
You shoot like this, right?
Yes. They make fun of me. Yeah, I hit my growth spurt when I was in 10th grade. I went from being one of the shortest kids in my sophomore class to one of the tallest kids. So if I had known I'd be tall, maybe I would have practiced
worked
basketball
on
more.
it.
But
You what, 6'3"? Right?
6'5".
What, really? Oh my gosh.
Yep. Awesome. Well, mine is my handwriting. Like my daughter, she's only 2.5. So I have one that's 2.5 and then a 9-month-old. And so my 2.5-year-old, thinks that dad's drawings are great. And I can tell you that all of my drawings, especially my handwriting, is absolutely atrocious. Like, it's just awful. My excuse is I'm a lefty, but like I put doctors to shame. Like, it's like bad.
Oh, no.
You strike me as someone who would be like a calligrapher. So.
No. So it's really funny. My wife used to be a 4th grade teacher, and she taught me the handwriting hack, apparently, is like to make a straight line with your E's, like the that bottom part of an E. And apparently that like makes anyone's handwriting look nice. And I tried it, and it still looks bad, and I don't care. Like, I don't have the time. I just go for it. So it's just always bad, always will be bad. And that's something that my daughter's gonna have to come to terms with one day, So
It's going to be hard.
it is. Yeah. So anyways.
All the kids will make fun of her in school.
Yeah, your dad, he's got the worst handwriting. Well, so there we are. I don't really know how that ties into busyness, but it's at least something there. So let's transition to busyness. Joe, I know you did some research on why in the heck we're so busy. So could you talk to us about that a little bit?
Well, I can just compare it to the world I grew up in 1970s and 80s. And it's so different. I wish my kids knew that world, because I was able, at age 5, my mom allowed me to walk to my friend's house. I swear it was about like a mile away. I was 5 years old, and there's no way I would allow that nowadays. But in my neighborhood, we all knew one another. Like 5 houses down that way, 5 houses down that way, 5 houses. It was a trisection. 5 houses down that way, and so we just went out and played. It was unstructured, unsupervised. And there was a great deal of freedom in that. I didn't rely on my parents. I wasn't looking for them to drive me to a play date, It was just a lot different. Now, we were into sports, but it didn't have the priority it does today. Organized sports is almost like a religion right now, and we're very much involved in that, so. But if you don't have religion, if you don't have faith, that can be the total replacement, for that. So everything was, like I said, we didn't have any play dates, and sports wasn't something that was an absolute must. I don't remember club volleyball or club soccer or club this or club that. So now, as a parent, we're driving, or at least when the kids were home, we were driving during the month of October and November because it was football, it was soccer, volleyball, and all that. We were always on the go. We had to travel. We had to schedule. And then we had to schedule in play dates as well, So, just recently my daughter was just kind of bored at home, and she's relying on me and her mom so much, And I wish I could say to her, go play with your friends. But there's no friends in the neighborhood. There's no kids playing outside, at least in my neighborhood, I know that's different, everywhere. But in the last couple neighborhoods I lived in Wisconsin, and Maryland, and also in Texas, the neighborhoods are pretty vacant as far as kids are concerned. So I think that's one of that paradigm shift in culture and priority, and how everything is organized now, structured, is one of the reasons why we're so busy.
Yeah, and just like the general concern for safety too, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Just like having to keep the kids, in eyes, like within eyesight.
That's true. Yeah.
And so that just makes it harder too.
And just to kind of add to what Joe just said, as someone who grew up in the 90s, the world that you're describing, Joe, is so much more similar to the world I grew up in than the world today is to the world that I grew up in. Because, I mean, I didn't grow up in kind of a, suburban area would be kind of what you might see around here. My area was very rural. It was in the woods kind of thing. But you knew where all the kids lived because they were all in my class at school and whatnot. And you would ride your bikes to each other's house. You'd gather at a common place, and you play, pick up baseball until the sun went down. I mean, I remember days where my parents told me, you're not allowed back here until dinner. Like they would just say, go outside. You're not to be in this house until dinner time.
Right.
And that was that. And it was awesome. It was so much fun. And the other day I was out for a run, and I passed by a neighborhood, probably over in Keller or something like that, and I saw a group of kids in a cul-de-sac all playing a pickup wiffle ball game, like boys, girls, everybody. There must have been 15 kids there, and I was like, that is the most beautiful sight I've seen. Like nature is healing. This is beautiful. But yeah, something's been lost.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you even pointed out in your research, Joe, that like Workaholics Anonymous was founded in 1983, right?
Sorry.
Like, no, you're all good.
Okay. It was 1983. And that's when you started to see this emphasis on work as a kind of an idol, a golden calf a little bit, where it became, even people that work for the church can get caught up in that world where they're working at the church for so long. And the kids end up resenting the church because they took their parents away, So it's something that, status and money and all that became more and more important. The goal was, or became, I should say, is that if you work hard at school, you'll get into a good college. If you go to a good college, you'll get a good job. If you get a good job, you will, provide enough money and live a happy life. Okay, now some of that, is good. It's not always true, but you can easily exclude faith from that.
Right.
For my goal for my kids was first and foremost was to get them to heaven, and to help them foster good relationships that are pleasing to God, with the family and with their friends and everything. So. So that is the ultimate goal, and those other things that I just mentioned about education and everything could easily fit in there, but often it doesn't. With a lot of people. So
right, absolutely.
Yeah.
How have you seen this impact your parenting, Regan? Like just this overwhelming expectation to be busy?
Well, when I think back to when I was the busiest, the first time I noticed being really busy was in high school.
Yeah.
And there was an emphasis, like to your point about you to get good grades, you go to college, that's the answer. There's kind of that tunnel vision. And so every decision I made in high school was with the goal of this is going to look good on a college application, it's going to help with scholarships. So there was an activity every single day. I was involved with cheerleading, gymnastics, different clubs, and had to go to work when I was 16. So I started working also. Helped with, I was in our church orchestra, so I played the flute once a month.
Nice.
So that required practice and another commitment, which was great, But there wasn't a lot of downtime, or when there was downtime, it wasn't as enjoyable as it could have been.
Right.
It kind of robbed me of some relaxation because I think I was spending that time just decompressing from it all.
Right.
So yeah, that was tough because I felt a lot of expectations at an early age of like this is going to make or break me because it's going to impact am I going to a good college or not? And
totally.
That's my next, what's my career path? So
have you seen that play itself out with your own family at this point, like your kids and everything?
So each kid can be in one thing. We kind of have a one activity. It's not a hard and fast rule, but that's kind of what works for us right now. So Kyle's in gymnastics, Gaines does flag football. Yeah. And we just try hard not to fill our afternoons because I do want them to come home and decompress. Like their job right now is school, and a lot is expected of them. Totally. So I want them to come home and have some freedom. And I do send them outside. I'm like, I don't know what to do, Mom. Go outside. Bye. Get out of here. And it's really sweet. We are in a nice neighborhood with a lot of kids and kids that they don't go to school with. We live 30 minutes from the school, so they get a chance to meet some other kids. And there's this boy who comes up to the door every now and then and knocks, like old school, like, can Gaines come out to play? And I'm like, oh, this is so great. It's so nostalgic, and this is what they need is just to
You're like, thank you.
Yes, anytime.
Yeah, I do think it's so important to like be taking intentional measures to protect one of the most valuable or the most valuable thing we have with our kids, which is time, right?
Yeah.
And to really insert those margins. And just more on the pressure side, I feel like not only is there a pressure for the kids to be involved, but there's also this pressure for parents to obviously look good, but I think also, again, as you kind of pointed out, Joe, in your research for this, to really live out the workplace culture at home, right? Like the culture of the workplace, especially in dual income houses, which is like almost a necessity at this point, right? Because it's just, it's hard, right? But the culture of the workplace really is seeped into the home to where the home starts to model the expectations and the busyness and, the clock in, clock out mentality of the workplace, and I think that's something that parents wrestle with. I know that that it takes me a bit like to decompress, like going into a weekend or something like that. Like I have my work week brain and then my weekend brain, and switching those gears can really take some time, right?
Sure.
So it is a struggle, right?
Yeah.
And we even have the blessing of just being a single income
I don't know
family,
if your
right?
wife can notice, but my wife notices when I'm still thinking about work.
Oh yes, absolutely.
She goes,
Yeah.
I need you here right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's one thing that really surprised me about 5-7 years ago is that my daughters were telling me their friends would eat alone, and so they wouldn't have family dinner.
Yep.
Oh, for dinner?
Yeah,
Wow.
for dinner. Yeah. And so they're not processing life. They're not like getting that counsel they need at the dinner table, and they certainly weren't praying in the evening too before they went to bed. So and those are the moments that are really critical.
Yes.
Because especially if you don't have any filters or guidelines with social media. Because if I had a bad day at school, for instance, and maybe got bullied or had a bad day in general. I went home and got away from it. I didn't bring it with me.
Right.
But now you bring it with you with your phone. So, and then you can bring. And some parents allow it upstairs in their rooms, and it's constant. There's no borders. There's
Right.
no boundaries. And so those things are very important.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like having grown up in the digital generation, right? It's crazy how quickly the internet becomes not only just like a source of comfort, but also a source of authority, like it's really strange. And so it really can take on a very parental role very quickly, especially if left unchecked, right? Because you have the immediacy of something that can give you some sort of comfort or distraction. And you also can search anything to find the quote unquote right answer, right? And so there's like the two primary roles of the parent, right? To comfort and to instruct that can just be taken just like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And to guard against that, I think is so key for us to try and raise holy families, right?
I tell Regan and people who are young adult parents is that start thinking about what kind of policies, so to speak, or guidelines you want for your kids, because we had to react. So my oldest daughter's 28, and so when she was in high school, that's when it was really becoming common,
Yep.
and the kids wanted a phone and everything, and so we were learning as we went, and I kind of wish I could go back and change a few things now.
Yes.
But sort of to think about that and plan ahead
Yeah.
is really important.
Well, hindsight's 20/20.
That's right. It is. Yeah.
Yeah, Gaines so he's almost 10, and he's been asking when he can have a phone.
Yeah.
And I said, what do you need a phone for? Like, what is it for? And he can't give me a straight answer. And I think he's just so used to seeing people with it.
Yes.
He thinks
Yeah.
it's this accessory that belongs in your hand
Yeah.
wherever you go.
Right.
I'm speculating it may be something else. I think some friends already have some phones.
Right.
And they have bigger families and they need to get in touch with each other, and that's fine, no judgment. But I just said, you don't, that's not something you need. And I point out my bad habits and I say, do you want to be like mom and be on her phone all the time? It's not good. I don't want that for you.
How do you deal with that pressure though? Do you feel like there's a societal pressure?
I don't feel the
That's
pressure
good.
because I just recognize that wouldn't be healthy
Right.
for us. I'm taking the Jennifer Garner approach on social media. Have you heard what she said about letting her kids on social media? She said, until my kids can show me proof that it's good for you, then it's not a discussion, because all I have is
Yeah.
all these articles and books and proof that it's not good for you.
Right.
So you can have social media when you turn 18, and before you leave the house and go to college or job or whatever, we will sit down and navigate it together and talk about what this looks like and the dangers and things like that. But you can't have it before you're 18.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, our kids, I think they started getting one 14, 15. I still think that's too young. So my wife and I had a little bit of a disagreement on that. But we put in measures, to protect them from any harm, or at least we try to. But so we never allow them to take it to their rooms, or any gadget for that matter, upstairs to their bedrooms and everything. So, and when adults came over, company came over, like my relatives, whatever, or neighbors, I told them they have to put it down. I want them to talk to their company, and because they can easily get bored with adult company and just go on their phones and never develop that skill they need to talk to adults. So, yeah.
What would y'all say to parents that are hearing this and that are like, yeah, that sounds nice, right? To have the ability to do that. But my kid already has a phone, right? We don't eat meals together as a family. We're a dual income household. We're always working. We're super busy. We feel the expectation of sports, and we need a scholarship to get into college because we can't afford it otherwise. So we allow for that to be a real priority in our house. Like, how do you even begin to slow down?
Gosh. Well, I'm proud of my son. So he's my oldest son, and he's engaged to be married. He went on a flip phone because he didn't want to get distracted so much, and so he did that. One thing that helped with him and my other kids, though, was to let them know and to remind them all the time, this is our phone. Okay, we're paying the payments. Okay, it's a privilege which could be taken away at any time. You know. A lot of kids assume it's theirs, and the parents don't argue with that.
Right.
You know? So I will lay down the principles first, and do it gradually, whatever they want to do. But I definitely would not let them take it up to their rooms, because who knows? I mean, they could be up all night, on social media. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think regular check-ins too, like whether it's once a week or once a month, and if they're doing great with it, point that out and say, you're showing me I can trust you with this. If that ever changes, then that's something that can be taken away. And again, to your point, it's a privilege. It's not something that belongs to you. I'm very big on, like, you're not paying the bills around here, so nothing you own you don't own that. Like, we got that for you, or it was a gift, so it's a privilege, and treat it with respect and show us that we can trust you, or it gets taken away. Our actions have consequences, even as adults, so it's something that they should learn at a younger age. Yeah,
and I think, like, inserting, like, the advice that I would give, and we're very early on, right? Like, we have little kids, but even just so far, there are some days where it's like, we're just putting on a show. Like, we just need a second, right?
That's okay.
Yeah, right. Or whatever it is, right, that we're doing. And I think what I find is that substituting a habit that is less healthy with something that's better, like genuinely better for the kid. You have fuss for maybe like a day or two, but then after that, it just becomes part of the rhythm. And like the kid is actually super glad. And I think that's something we're going to talk about that later in the podcast, later in the series, but something that is really hard for modern parents is discipline. And it's so required to be like healthy parents is to know what's better for your kid than your kid claims to know, because obviously in our relationship with God, we see that all the time. The Lord disciplines us because he loves us, right? And we need to do the exact same thing for our kids. We need to constantly be looking out for their true good rather than their immediate good, and trying to insert habits and even time to reflect on that for parents.
I tell my kids when they give me kickback or pushback, I'm like, you're going to hate me now? It's okay. In 10 years, you're going to love me. And my daughter, she's a nurse right now, and she goes, Dad, I'm so glad that you taught me to leave the phone downstairs, because my friends, they're struggling now because of not having any limitations. So.
And I think that's a really good point too, is like, it's so, and again, no one's perfect in this, but it's so easy to think so immediately as a parent to try and solve a problem.
Yes.
And this has been such a big perspective shift for me as a young dad. It's like moving from problem solving, which you just have to do for the first like year or two of life. Like, you're just a problem solver, right? And every once in a while you get a smile, maybe, right? Moving from a problem solver to like a vision setter, right? So like, you have a vision of how you want your family to be, how you want your kids to be. And if you're just constantly solving problems, that vision probably isn't happening, right? Like, problems are the foreground for that vision to then be built. And so then like sitting down with your spouse and actually building out that vision, and also just like in prayer, thinking about like, God, who have you made my child to be? And taking those intentional steps toward that is something that's, I think, then you have more energy to do things like, make rules about the phone, right? Because it's not just, I'm doing this for the sake of doing it, but I'm doing this because I want something greater for you, right? Long term.
Could I throw kind of a grenade into the conversation
Please.
for a moment? So I feel this is not anything novel, I'm sure, what I'm about to say, but something I've experienced in having conversations with families on these topics.
Yes.
Is that the general complaint is kind of based on how systemic these things are, right? This is just the culture we live in, where these expectations have already been set. So it's like, we can make these decisions as a family that we're going to monitor phones, we're going to backtrack on activities, we're going to, not spend our Sundays at soccer tournaments, etc. But no one else is making those decisions, and it's it's making my children feel ostracized because they're no longer part of their social groups that are all going along with these things. It's why, if you remember a number of years ago, there was a book that came out. I remember reading it. It was called The Benedict Option by Rod Dreher, I think his name was, Catholic author.
Yeah.
That book was so prophetic at the time, and I think the reason, I don't agree with it, by the way, but the reason I think it was so popular is because it kind of proposed this idea that, like, the only way of survival in a culture like ours is to essentially bunker down, withdraw, and kind of preserve the ideal culture in a controlled space. It's why you've seen homeschool numbers go up so dramatically. It's just, I think, kind of breeding, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, I'm just kind of pointing it out. It's breeding, I think, a different type of family these days, and even a different type of Catholic family, where it's like in a sense, I can't beat the culture, so we're going to withdraw from it.
Right.
And the problem I find parents are having right now is, like, they're trying, and again, I'm not saying that this is right or wrong.
Right.
They're trying to have a foot in both worlds. Like, I want my kid to be socially accepted and be involved in sports. And it's not a matter of, I'm trying to get them a scholarship to school or make them a professional athlete or whatever. It's just like, I just want my kid to be happy and not feel like they're an outcast. But it means I have to cede to all these things that I don't necessarily agree with, right? Because it's one thing to do this in a vacuum. If you live on a it's like that. If you remember that M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Village, right? It's like we could just create our own society with its own walls and live in a way that no one who lives in that society is ever aware of what goes on outside of it. So I'm never going to ask any questions. If I don't have friends who are on smartphones, on social media, and play 15 soccer games a week, I'm not ever going to think that what I'm doing is abnormal.
Right.
But as soon as I'm in a bubble where that is what kids are doing, I feel like I've lost something as a sixth grader, when everyone goes home after school and messages each other on their phones, and I'm out of the loop all the time.
Right.
I hear parents say that to me. They agree that all of this is bad, but they feel such a tension. Like, what do I do? I can't just outcast my children,
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's a really, really good point.
Like, what things are they excluded from, though?
I think that the argument I hear most often is, like, just social, general social networking, like insofar as I'd use that word networking to talk about middle schoolers or high schoolers, but, like, kind of this idea that, you'll have your conversations that happen during school and kids are involved, but then all of a sudden they go home and those conversations are continuing via text, via Discord or Instagram or whatever, and then all of a sudden I don't have a smartphone, so I'm out of the loop. Plans are being made apart from me. I'm just not part of what's happening. And in a weird way, I felt that a little bit. Even I'm 35. I felt that when I first went off to college. I got a phone very late in the game. Even all things considered, I mean, it wasn't common for kids to have phones when I was in high school, but I didn't get one until I was a senior, and it was a flip phone. And I didn't actually get a smartphone until 2017. So I'm very, very late to the. But I'm addicted to this thing just like anybody else, right? So it's not like holding out on it made me any less susceptible to the addiction. But I remember when I first went off to college, like, I had never sent a text in my life. And all of a sudden, and I was very proud of that. Like, I'm holding out on that. I don't need that. But then I go to college and everyone is communicating via text.
Yeah.
And if I'm not participating, all of a sudden I'm sitting in my room not knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think parents are aware that I don't like the way this is trending, but I can't leave my kid, let my kid feel isolated.
With my wife and I, we had the same tension, okay? And so our vision for our kids was to be in the world, but not of the world, and to be the salt of the earth and all that, So, and the tension is, I expected it to come, and so when it came, it wasn't so alarming. And so I would embrace that tension, and a lot of that, is discretionary. So I'm not sure exactly what they're being excluded from, but I know that with my daughter, she's number 4, and so when we punish her, we take away the phone, the iPhone, and give her a flip phone, and she wouldn't use it. It was too embarrassing, So I'm like, really? You can't use it? Your friends will make fun of you? Yeah, I can't do it, So that's the tension, it's also the tension we have even without social media, is to be countercultural and at the same time honoring those good things that are in culture, so.
I think personally I see two extremes which are to be avoided. And I want to use the Garden of Gethsemane the Garden of Eden as an allegory here, right? I was reading a book recently that I'm going to talk about a lot in this podcast called Big God, Little Devil. Father Zack's already laughing because I've brought it up like 5 times to him personally. Amazing book. And in that book, Big God, Little Devil, he is talking about the Garden of Eden. And he's saying that God wanted to reveal his self-knowledge, right? He wanted to reveal knowledge and wisdom to man in the context of intimacy, right? In the context of relationship. And man wanted it quickly, right? And so man just took the fruit, right? And I think we see two extremes in parenting, at least I do, right? And I'm a young parent, right? So I'm speaking from the outside in a lot of ways. The one extreme is, who cares, right? Like, we're just gonna send them into the world and God's gonna take care of them, right? Like, we're not gonna do any boundaries, we're just gonna throw them in there. And they need the social integration. That's more important than it is for us to like try and regulate things. And to that, I would say that's kind of the philosophy of the fall, right? Is like, let's just go for knowledge before we're ready for it, right? And not in the context of intimacy, right? Like, it needs to be in the context of intimacy. And the other one is exactly what you're describing, which we see very commonly in Catholic communities these days, which is we're just going to build our own community. And the thing about that is that's not a Catholic or Christian outlook. That's more, I would say, a Judaic outlook, right? Like, sort of preserve the tradition, no need for evangelization, right? But we're actually called to, like Joe's saying, be in the world and evangelize. And so kind of the healthy middle ground that I see and I'm planning on is exposure therapy, basically, right? Like you expose in doses, and then you make sure that you have enough trust built to where the child comes and feels comfortable sharing their feelings with you. And I think that's what's so key, is like balancing, breaking all that down. What is it truly? I think it's the balance between wanting to be to have an intimate relationship with your kids, right? It's like this close bond while also being firm and guiding them. And that's the tension that we're facing. It's exactly the same thing in the culture, right? Is we want them to have these intimate friendships, but we also want to put the boundaries where the boundaries are. So if we can focus on our intimacy with our kids while also having healthy boundaries, I think a lot of those things are going to take care of themselves, because our kids are going to be used to coming to us and then also respecting our authority, which is exactly what navigating those waters requires.
That's right.
I don't know if that's what I would say.
Yeah, and as a parent, you need proximity and presence, and you need to prioritize your children and your spouse over work. And I when I was working for the church a couple of years ago, I had guys brag to me about working 14, 16-hour days.
Yeah.
I'm like, what about your kids?
Right.
And I know that's laudable, that hard work and getting things done and doing good things for the church. You can't do it at the expense of your own kids.
Absolutely.
So I brought up many times before in OCIA the near-death experiences and life reviews, and people, their life reviews are very consistent. God shows them those moments with the family that are the most important. It's not the achievements at the office. It's those moments they invested or didn't invest with their family members, so
yeah,
it's really high priority.
Absolutely, and I think it's a good jumping off point into the second topic, which today, which is parental anxiety. And I think that is fed by this busyness narrative, right? That we need to be busy, busy, busy. And what ends up happening, at least that I see, is that we busy ourselves into further and further bad places, and then our busyness is our coping for that, and then we just end up in a worse place, right? Like, this busyness kind of just feeds a very self-fulfilling cycle of burnouts. So I brought a book today. I'll probably do that every time, but I recommend this book. It's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. So I'll show it to multiple camera angles there. And it is How to Stay Healthy, Emotionally Healthy, and Spiritually Alive in the Chaos of the Modern World. It was written in 2019. Very prophetic for what we've been through since then. And in that book, author John Mark Comer, he talks about the temptation of Jesus, right? So if we remember in the desert, Jesus is tempted by Satan in 3 different ways. And If you remember before that, he spent 40 days in solitude and fasting, right? And so my perspective was always that, and his as well, right? That God was just like flexing his power, right? So that's why he fasts 40 days and 40 nights and goes into solitude, and then Satan comes because Satan's trying to hit him at his weakest, and God's like, yeah, I'm better than you, like get out of here, you know? But John Mark Comer makes the argument that because of how much solitude grounds Christ throughout his life, like he's always going off in the solitude. It seems instead that he was receiving his power and authority from the solitude rather than using it to just show how awesome he was, right? And so that's a total flip of our perspective, because I think that we think of that stillness, of that solitude in a world of noise as more effort, right? Because you have to actually sit and kind of get through your thoughts, right? Which is a lot of work. But if we're truly following Christ's example, it's actually in that stillness and solitude that we need to be operating out of instead of busyness. Because again, with busyness, what do we see? He defines hurry as a state of frantic effort one falls into in response to inadequacy, fear, and guilt. So in business, what are we seeing? We're seeing inadequacy, fear, and guilt driving us to just be frantically busy. And then we end up making more decisions and mistakes out of inadequacy, fear, and guilt. And then we feel worse, which then drives us into further and further busyness, which I think is something that we see all across the board, not just with parents, but especially with parents. So do you guys feel like you're seeing that around you, or have you experienced pieces of that cycle personally or as parents?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us anxious parents feel like we're this computer with all these different tabs open. And if we're not actively working to close them or take care of them, when you're resting, you can't get those things done. Yeah. So then you feel guilty. And I can definitely see the shame spiral happen from that, from just being allowed to let yourself rest. I feel like I have to give myself permission. If I can just check one thing off my list, then I can let my body rest. I'm exhausted, but I still have to get one thing done. Yeah. And then I can lay down and feel like I can pat myself on the back because I got one thing done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's there's a lot of things to kind of keep going. And I think a lot of it is like, again, this societal pressure of like, you need to do this to be a good parent, right? Mm-hmm. Like you need to be involved in this or that, and that's what constitutes being a good parent. And it just kind of drives us into business because that also makes money too, right? For other people. Yeah. And so it's a real self-perpetuating prophecy. Just to throw another piece of literature in there, in the Screw Tape Letters, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. It's written by C.S. Lewis. The devil's realm is the kingdom of noise, right? And the whole plan of the devil is to get us to drown out our internal noise with external noise. And he's pretty darn good at that, right? And we are terrified of the internal noise, but it's precisely that which can be made a prayer, not the external noise, right? The football game can't be made into a prayer, like really, right? Unless you're unless you're already like you've done a lot of interior work, right? But I really think that the internal noise, all of that can be made into a prayer. So yeah, Father, are you seeing a lot of this busyness and burnout and thus anxiety in confession in the culture?
Forget about confession. Yeah. I see it in my own life. Are you kidding me? Yeah, I mean, goodness, I relate to everything that you're saying, and I'm not a parent of, the biological children, of course. I mean, I find even how often I get to I relate very much to what Regan said. I get to the end of my week, whatever we define as the end of my week, and I'm looking at my calendar and I actually start counting my hours. I had 14 hours this day, I had 10 hours this day, on that day, not as much. And I'm like, do I have permission to give myself some time to relax and recover? And sometimes if I feel like I didn't work enough, well, I don't really feel like I can indulge, if to use I think a ridiculous word in this context, indulge in a day off, indulge in prayer time, right? It's like, because sometimes I sit in the chapel and I start to realize exactly what you're saying, which is like, I need this place of silence in order to draw any energy from. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, I don't know when I'm going to get to those emails. So like, if I don't do them now, they're not going to get done. And that's not really okay either. Right. So it's rough. So yes, I sympathize with anybody who comes into the confessional or anyone comes in my office complaining about these things. I don't feel at all apart from them. They're my own struggles as well.
Two things, over the weekend, my company was over, so I had two aunts and an uncle that I haven't seen in a long time, and so I wanted to spend a lot of time with them. They came Friday night and left this morning, actually. And I was dying to get things done. There's so much I was, for work and everything. And I just had to, at those moments, I just have to surrender it to God. I said, God, if it's above and beyond me, then I surrender it to you. But right now I'm giving priority to my company, or whoever it may be. On a different note, too, when it comes to the need for less distraction.
Yeah.
We tell our kids if we have to do a 12-hour drive somewhere, we allow them to do some gadget play, whatever, playing their games on an iPod, but we also take it away, and we tell them that silence is the language of God. Boredom is really the mother of creativity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the thing is that a lot of our fun nowadays on the computer, on gadgets and everything is actually done for us.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, we had to really create our own fun and be creative, right. And take risks. And even the book, Anxious Generation, he was saying that it's so important for kids to have recreational physical play without too much protection. They're going to get their knees scratched and all that kind of stuff, but they negotiate with each other. They take risk. They get hurt. They have fun. They conquer. They fail, and all that kind of stuff. And that helps them enter into the real world. Right. Whereas if you take that away and it's all virtual, it's like I think that's one of the reasons why we have the anxiety problem.
It's funny. I just thought of this as you were thinking, Joe, or as you were speaking. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like this image of like the seedling kind of sprouting through the concrete. Like life finds a way no matter what. If you look at things like, I spend a lot of time around the kids at the school, and the two things that they talk about the most. Well, actually, I would say like the one thing they talk about the most is Minecraft, right? And I'm sure, we'll look back on this episode 10 years from now and be like, Minecraft, what on earth is that? But like right now, it's obviously a big deal. It came as a movie and everything.
Right.
And things like Roblox, I don't even understand. I have to actually ask the kids, like, can you explain this to me? And what I find when I'm examining those two things, this is something a lot of kids love, Roblox and Minecraft. Yep. What are those? What do you find in those two things?
Oh, yeah.
Minecraft, it's a sandbox of being able to build and create and do all these things. Roblox is all things considered, insofar as video games go, very communal. You're communicating a lot. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of freedom. You're kind of developing even some relationships through the game, which is, of course, probably that's a topic for another time, how healthy that is. But it shows that these two principal desires that even children have, I want creativity, I want community, but this is my arena to play in, it's my laptop or whatever. I'm still going to try to find those things. And these things are popular for that reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's really important what you're pointing out there, Father Zack, is that it's a sandbox with the materials that are already there. So you understand what you need to do. You're given the tools, right? And all you have to do is add the creativity, right? And with enough practice. Right. Life is not like that, like, at least not self-evidently, right? Like, and that's why this idea of like, oh, just like let your kids do whatever, or, you do whatever is actually unfree, because freedom requires a certain amount of constraints, right? Freedom requires, this is the game we're playing, right? And within the context of this game, right? Or within the context of this relationship, these are the tools that can be used so that you can pursue these things. And I just think that's so key, that with our life, like that's why one of the principal reasons we're Catholic is like we have that law, right? And we have the example of Christ so that we can actually know how to live, and then within that find true freedom, versus if you just enter the world without any idol, without any example, and just yourself for your guide, no wonder you're going to be paralyzed. You have no idea what even to build. You don't even know what building looks like, right? You have nothing. So even there, okay, we made video games into prayer, so I guess maybe you can make football into a prayer too. So that was good. And I want to say as well that I think that a key piece of all of this is how we were parented, right? And how we view God the Father, right? Because what I'm hearing underneath us, and I struggle with the exact same thing, is this sort of fear that we need to like earn God's love, right? That by these certain amount of hours, then God will be happy with me, and then I can rest, right? And until that point, like I'm toast, right? Like I'm kind of worthless in His eyes until I grind out enough and close enough taps, like you said, Regan, right? And I want to be very clear. We're going to talk about that in later episodes, but here I just want to say that is the devil's tactic, right? That is the devil's tactic. And all we have to do is realize that, and then we can use it to our advantage. So I want to point out a verse.
Good.
So we are in 1 Peter, and the verse is, "Be sober and vigilant. Your opponent, the devil, is prowling about like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, solid in your faith," right? And that's like scary, right? It's like, man, the devil's out there like a lion. He's going to eat me. And that's how it feels, right? It's like, I need to get things done or else something bad's going to happen or else this judgment is coming, right? Like this roaring lion is right behind me. But in the verse there, it says the roaring lion is prowling about. And I don't know if you guys know about prowling, but for prowling to kill, you want to be silent. You want to be strategic, right? You want to sneak up on your kill, let them not know that you're there, and then take them out in one fell swoop. The devil doesn't have that power. So what he has is a loud roar. And so what happens to us is he roars really loudly in our idea of like our identity or idea of who God is, right? So for example, like we're saying here, right? I need to do something to earn God's love, or I need to do something to feel okay. And he roars that out with us like really loud to the point where we just obey it without even questioning it. But if we can realize that that's the devil's roar and that God is different from that, right? That God is pleased with us no matter what, and that there's nothing we can do that will make God love us less or more. And if we can then recognize that the devil is roaring in that moment, we can take that roar to prayer and ask God, why is this resonating with me? Why is this roar like affecting me right now? And draw out usually like a memory or an experience of our own parenting, like how we were parented in a wounded fashion. And then God can actually draw closer to us through that roar. And I think that is the key to slowing down, to fighting this notion of hurry, is actually to turn our hurry into a quiet prayer to God and try to find peace beneath it. Right. The last thing, I just want to finish the verse, right? Verse 10, it says, "The God of all grace who called you to his eternal glory through Christ Jesus will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you after you've suffered a little." So right there in the verse, right? Be sober and vigilant. This is kind of scary idea, but even right there in the verse, it's saying God is allowing this so that he can establish you more deeply in his true identity, right? And so I think we just kind of, we get scared and then we distract ourselves or we busy ourselves. Instead, like allow that fear to turn into a prayer. And I think some amazing things can happen. So that was a long rant. Any comments?
No, that was great. I think with anxiety, I think it's helpful we want to turn away from it. We're scared,
yes.
Right? But I do think it's helpful to sit with our feelings, not to ruminate over them, but to kind of break it apart and dismantle it so it doesn't have that power over us. Yeah. And so many themes we've had in our homilies and our readings lately have been, we're not meant to do this alone. Right. So yes, anything that we fear, anything that we're struggling with, we should be taking to God. We weren't not meant to do this by ourselves.
Yeah, and again, that's the model that we need to set. Because like, if we are doing that ourselves, right? If we are going to God with our emotions, then we're going to be so much more capable of handling our kids' emotions, right. Which means they're going to be so less likely of repeating our unhealthy patterns of going to work or distraction to get the gratification that only a relationship can give, right? So I think that's like so key as well. Right?
So many things I feared too never really came true.
Yeah, right.
The bad things that happened, I didn't anticipate. I didn't fear it. It took me by surprise, And the Lord knows that, that if he reveals what I'm going to suffer ahead of time, like he did with St. Paul, it's not going to be good for me.
Right.
So he surprises me. But, so that's one thing too. And there's times I've gone into, a deep crisis, darkness, a few times, and you know what? I got through it. It was tough, but it wasn't too much. I thought it was too much at the time, but he gets us through those difficult times, and you fear that also as a parent for your kids too. Yeah. My number 4, she was going through a rough spot, and I was making spiritual sacrifices for her, and now she's married, and she's She told her husband that I want you to be a spiritual leader like my dad. You know, that was cool. I couldn't envision her saying that, 2 years prior to that, So that was a really pleasant surprise. And it was really nice. And so they pray together spontaneously, the rosary and things like that. And there was a point there, I'm like, she was way off the reservation. But the Lord brought her back, and He was faithful. He heard my prayer. And I also prayed to Saint Joseph, to protect her, and she got through it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think something else key. Sorry to just keep hogging this. So Father Zack, interrupt me at some point. But I think something key is that what gets us through difficult times is not what we've achieved, but it's who we love, right? The relationships, right? Just kind of like what you're saying at the end of life, people look back and they regret or love relationships. What gets us through those difficult moments that we're so afraid of is not our preparedness for those moments, as much as it is the love and the relationships and the intimacy that we foster with those that really matter to us.
Yeah. So I graduated from Franciscan University in '96. So from '94 to '96, there was a lot of talent there. I was rubbing elbows with a lot of people, and they have all these great accomplishments they can show. Books and ministries and all that kind of stuff, and apostolates and I got to a point in my life where probably about 20 years later, I'm like, what have I really done? I kind of went through a midlife crisis. And just a little bit of one, but I came to the realization, in a more deep way. I knew this theoretically before, that it's what God is doing, in me. And it's not it's not job status. It's not how much, you're making. I had a lot of doctor friends and everything, and so you can get a little self-conscious sometimes, But I made a decision to work for the church and to work for souls and so you have to give up, some things that look good on paper, when you do that.
Yeah.
But the Lord, I'm in a much different place than I was like 3 or 4 years ago. So.
That's because you came here and just
That's right.
fell in love with the parish.
You
right?
built me up.
Father Zack, any thoughts with all this, or you feeling like we're covering the topic adequately?
Sure. Yeah.
Sounds great.
That's good. Okay, I want to move into our last section then, which is how do we practically slow down, right? And just a framing quote from Stephen Covey, author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, like a legend. Covey, I don't know, Covey, I think. He says, we achieve inner peace when our schedule is aligned with our values. So I think that's just a really good framing piece. Is your schedule aligned with your values? If not, you have the freedom to take that back, right? For your kids, for you, you have that freedom. But how do we practically do that as parents?
I have some things in mind, but I want to hear from you.
Yeah, Regan.
I love our morning routine. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. So we have to get the kids up at a certain time. We have to leave the door by a certain time, but then we have a 30-minute drive to school. So I try to use that time intentionally, and we play the Saint of the Day podcast.
Oh, good.
And then I give the kids each chance to pick a song they want to hear. And I'll interrupt sometimes, and I'll say, look at that sunrise. How beautiful is that? So we stop and talk. We talk about our day. If it's a Wednesday and I know they're going to have Mass, I'll say, listen to the homily so you can tell Mom about it later. So we talk about our day, we pray together. If an ambulance passes by or a fire truck, we pray for that.
Yeah.
And so we just try to make the most of it. We're big morning people, so we start off on the right foot there. And I love the evenings too. We stop and pray, and we started a new routine where we do the 3-2-1 prayer, which a friend told me about. They have prompts on Hallow, but you don't really need the app. So it's 3 things you're grateful for, and it could be something that happened that day or just something that's on your mind. Last night, Kyle said, I'm grateful we have a cat. And Bo said, I'm grateful for our church. So that was really sweet.
Nice.
And then it's 2 people you want to pray for and 1 thing you're sorry for. So a little mini examination of conscience
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah.
And just a chance that we can sit together as a family and kind of pray through our day.
Yeah, I love that.
We did the sorry part, then we're like, you did what? I'm like, let's get rid of that,
Chapter.
Oh, that's cool. We have a morning routine. I take my daughter to Founders School, and so we trade off. Sometimes we say formal prayers, sometimes we say spontaneous prayers, and we talk about the Saint of the Day and everything. So it's only about a 15-minute drive, but it's a nice time together that we have. And then, of course, I have to play some of her favorite songs, like Vienna by Billy Joel.
Oh, nice.
You ever heard that?
No.
She loves that song. I'm like, I never listened
By
to it before.
Billy Joel?
Yeah, Billy Joel, yeah. She loves that song. I don't know why.
That's amazing.
So look it up on your podcast.
Like the pianist?
Yeah, that guy.
You say
Yeah.
Billy Joel.
Billy Joel, yeah. The Billy Joel.
How
yeah.
there's that kid process
How
this.
old is your...
Oh, it doesn't matter. She overhears these songs from everybody.
I
Yeah,
didn't know kids these days
Yeah,
were
yeah.
big Billy Joel fans.
yeah. Like,
Minecraft and Billy Joel. That's what we're writing.
It'll bring the kids back.
yeah. We have on podcasts, we have a dad's, song list, so there's like about 90 songs, But my kids add to it, and I add to it and everything like that. So they started thinking I was cool when their friends were playing my songs.
Wow.
But anyways, one of the things that, the routines that have really slowed things down for us is roses and thorns, kind of like the 3, 2, 1
Yeah.
a little bit,
Yeah.
So we talk about what, a good thing that happened today and a bad thing that happened today, so we can process life together, at the dinner table. Say a blessing, of course. And then about 9 o'clock, maybe 9:30, we do a prayer. Sometimes it's been a while since we said the whole rosary. We either say a couple decades, or if we're really, really tired, we say spontaneous prayer. But when your kids, get to the high school age, they're going to want to like rush things. I got homework to do. Come on, let's get this over
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this is the most important thing you can
Yeah.
ever do in life, And so those are the two anchors in the day. Another thing, too, that for me, having 6 kids, it was impossible for me to give equal time to everybody
Sure.
at all times. So if I noticed anybody that was kind of getting close to the margins, off the territory a little bit, I would ask them to go for a walk, just, to touch base and everything. But I would say to my son Danny, it's been a long time since you and I went for a walk. Let's go for a walk and everything. So we have these good talks. So that's another one. And then Christian Smith, I was corresponding with him. He's a sociologist from Notre Dame. I asked him, what's the reason why so many young people are just leaving the church? And this is back in 2013. He says, well, it's what the parents do. You go to church, you get there just on time or maybe a little late, and then you hightail it out of there, I'm like, I do that, because I want to watch football, after. So I decided, to stay, around and have donuts and coffee and everything. And that became a really good practice. So to slow things down, not to rush out of Mass necessarily, but, to stick around and talk to people. And I am about the next step. I'm always about, where to go next.
Right.
And so I've been guilty of that. But I've seen the value of slowing things down and talking to people at church.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think for me, again, we're just getting started, but I think margin time, that idea of just like, even if you have to structure in intentional margin time to do nothing, it's so important. And I really am all about atmosphere as well. So like creating an atmosphere in your home of undistraction. So like removing technology from certain areas. We had a TV in our living room, and it would just would turn it on just because it's there. So we got rid of it, and now it's like awesome, And if we need to watch something, we have a spot for that. But like in our main space, it's not like a distraction there, because we want to be intentional about that space. So intentional margin. I think as well, I really believe the deepest desire on a daughter's heart is to be pursued, specifically by her father. That's a really important thing, it's to be pursued.
Mm-hmm.
But it needs to happen in the mode that my daughter needs, right? My daughters need. And so it can't happen by hey, we need to do this thing that I want to do together.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, it's what game do you want to do? And whatever crazy thing it is for my little 2.5-year-old, it's her. And so really, I let her run the show, when we have playtime. Not always, right? But I think that's also just really important, is letting your kids run the show instead of you always feeling like you have to run the show. You need to run the show with boundaries. You need to run the show with discipline. You need to run the show with family culture and things like that. And obviously getting your kids where they need to go. But when you're at home, give them that autonomy and just give them your presence, because that's really, really what they want. Mm-hmm. And that's been something that's been really, really cool for my relationship with my daughters. So
That's beautiful.
thanks.
It is, yeah.
It's fun. Father, what about for 11,000? What do you do for that?
I mean, I guess my advice, kind of going back to the question here, I preached a homily a couple weeks ago, and I kind of introduced this idea, again, not a novel idea by any means, but this idea of like doing a spiritual audit of your family, right? And it goes back to what you said, Jacob, that our schedules reflect our values, right? So I'm going to take maybe a bit of a different approach to this question than the three of you did. You explained a lot of very good practical things that you do. I would almost then say, those practical things that you're doing, I think are a result of what needs to come first, which is eliminating the things that are kind of, again, like not necessarily bad, but they suggest a priority that maybe you don't want to suggest as a parent, right? I mean, again, I feel like a broken record, but like you go back to I have 15 volleyball matches, this weekend. Okay, as a parent, is that something that you want to play into? Like, if you don't make time for Mass, I've said that to parents before. It's probably one of the harshest things I will say to people is like, don't be surprised if your kid leaves the church, if this is what you're showing them, Seriously. That it's okay to go to this many sporting events and miss Mass. Why would you be surprised if in 10 years they don't go to Mass? You're not showing it's a priority. Why would they prioritize it? So if you show your children that something is a priority, spiritually, interrelationally, they're going to learn to value that thing as well. And hopefully it's something they bring into their own family life one day, whenever, there's so many things I'm very grateful for my parents, for things that they really showed were valuable. It's funny, we were not and this is, I'm not throwing shade at my parents, they'd be the first to admit it. We were not really a family that prayed a bunch together. We didn't take our faith particularly seriously. And I know that's something that they've been very vocal, like we wish we could go back and change that. And, I'm sure so many parents feel that way. But my parents, gosh, they gave us so much space to play, to be creative. They had so much time for us to spend as a family. We took real good family vacations and spent Sundays together, and things that in hindsight were just so important. And I realize how helpful they were to me now. So, and they made those things priorities,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome.
And there's such a fun way to bring the faith home. My mom grew up in a time when it was you had to do these certain prayers or it means horrible things, the nuns cracking the whip in Catholic school. And so I think that she expresses this, she had some reluctance in teaching us some things. I called her when I was maybe 35 and I was like, why did you never teach me the rosary? I don't even know how to pray the rosary. But had I known a lot of those things, I don't know if I'd be where I am now. So you can't go back and, there's no regret there. I'm not upset that things happened the way that they did.
I 100% agree with you, Regan. I think like what you said, like there's fun ways to integrate these things. I think that was actually one of the ways, maybe, again, I don't want to just throw everything on other generations and whatnot, but the boat was missed there, I think, because there's always this idea, right? Like the family that prays together stays together. We pray our nightly rosary, and that's going to solve all the problems. So, like, well, it doesn't solve all the problems if you pray your nightly rosary with complete disinterest and you force everyone to come in, and it becomes a chore.
It's a chore.
And it's just something that the kids resent. It's like, why is that all of a sudden just this magical, the secret sauce that helps your family? And I think that's like something that people, I think errantly believed was like, well, if we just kind of check the boxes and do these things, we show our kids that it's important. It's like, well, not if you don't do it with the correct disposition. Not if you don't show that you care about integrating spiritual practice into their lived experience. If you're just creating this divide, okay, go and do all the things that you do each day, and then we'll kind of hold you hostage for our 15-minute speed rosary at the end of the night. It's not showing that you care about the faith. It's just showing that you're interested in checking a box as a parent, right? So
interested in the faith and interested in the kids, too.
So when the kids inevitably leave the church down the road, you can be like, well, I prayed my rosary with the kids.
I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know what went wrong.
They're just real heathens,
I don't want to sound, insensitive.
Right.
I get it. Like I'm sure if I were a parent, I'd be making a million mistakes.
Yes.
But I just would hate anyone to think that like if I just kind of check boxes that show something as a priority, it means magically it needs to be, as we kind of has been the theme here, everything needs to be an act of intimacy, right? I need to show that I care about spending time with you, that I care about speaking to you and knowing you and pursuing you. If it's just, I'm busy, but I heard on a podcast that I should pray the rosary with my family, kids are not stupid. They pick up on that stuff.
Right.
Like, okay, how interested is mom or dad really in this? This is just something we do to check a box.
And I want to say as well that we're talking a lot about, family culture and things like that. And there may be a lot of listeners who have kids that have already graduated. But the thing is, in a child's heart, you're always a child, right? There's always a desire for the intimacy and community with your parents, as well as the desire for like a proper discipline so you can be properly ordered. So wherever you are in your life as a listener, just know that like you have an opportunity to pursue reconciliation or to have that conversation about.
It's never too late.
It's never ever too late, and I think that's so key because I've seen that be so transformative in so many people's lives. I will always say this is like one thing I want my kids to walk away with, knowing from like me raising them, is knowing that dad is imperfect, but knowing that he knows how to get on his knees.
Well, that was my homily.
Yeah,
That was your
it was.
homily
Yeah,
this weekend.
right.
And show your kids you can repent.
Yes,
That's right.
because if they think that my love is perfect and I never recognize to them that it's not, like if I never show them that, then they're going to be so dysfunctional in the world because my broken representation is going to represent what the absolute of love looks like. I need to instead show them like, I'm sorry, I've made mistakes and just fall on my knees in front of them, right? So that they can see that I can at least be assigned to true love, right? And it's never, ever too late to do that. So, yeah,
That's right.
I think that's a good note to end on. So we'll wrap here. Father Zack, do you want to close us in prayer? Before we do that, I just want to say this week's challenge is to just take some time to reflect on how you can slow your life down for your family and for yourself. And instead of responding to the roaring lion, to wait beneath that for the gentle whisper of the Lord. So, yeah. Father Zack?
Yeah. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, thank you, praise you for this time we've spent together today. For all those who have tuned in to listen and participate in this conversation in a lot of ways, just pray that you help us to remember that the core of silence, the core of peace is intimacy. Intimacy with you, intimacy with our families and those that we love and care about. To be silent, to be still means nothing if it's a matter of box checking. It only is meaningful insofar as we invite you into it and strive in every way to be present to those around us. So help us to be still, help us to be silent, help us to reject busyness, not just for the sake of doing something we think, in theory will be good for our families, but doing something that is an act of great intimacy with the people we love and care for. Lord, give us a strength and wisdom to follow your will at all times. May Almighty God bless all of you, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
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 Thank you, Father. Thank you, Joe. And thank you, Regan. And we'll see you all next week for our topic on kind of cyclical nature of parenting. So it's a fun one. We'll see you then. Thanks, y'all. God bless.